for that. Oh, look, here go. Yeah. Drinks trolley, special bank holiday bonus. What have you grabbed, Suze, from the trolley today?
Very bank holiday, I feel. Aperol spritz, all round.
Okay. I don't think I've ever had one.
No? Aperol, Prosecco, and then soda to top up.
Okay, maybe not.
Very bank
okay.
holiday.
All right, but actually, if you recommend it,
Obviously, yeah.
I'll go with that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Suze. Okay, that's from the drinks trolley. This is from the confessions trolley. Confession sent in by Nanny Carr. Thank you, Nanny Carr. Simon and the Forgiving Collective. So another smart speaker, obviously handed out to Nanny Carr. Mm-hmm. My name is Nanny Carr, and I would first like to say this. I love my grandchildren. They are polite, inquisitive, kind, caring, and very funny.
Okay.
Mitigating circumstances.
Yeah, I think so.
My confession dates back to August 2017. I think a 12 certificate on this.
Ooh.
But not because it's particularly racy, but you'll see why.
Okay.
One of my grandchildren was interested in amateur dramatics, a bit like her mother. I paid for a 2-week course, at the end of which they were to perform a Disney classic on stage. My very talented grandchild had various roles in the chorus: a princess, a cook, a lobster, a maid. You get the picture?
Yeah.
Okay. My daughter was so proud and managed to be first in the queue for the tickets. So we had half the front row consisting of, in order, my husband, my daughter, her husband, 3 other children, and then, riding shotgun at the end, me, says Nanny Carr. Because of the numbers involved, I always make sure that we're all snacked up before we go anywhere. Sweets that don't make too much noise to open and not too sticky, and of course, drinks. Usually water in what we call our sippy bottles. Mine being an especially large size with a strap handle, which I carried with me everywhere. Because we all had our refreshments, half-time only... the interval, but half-time, only consisted of a quick comfort break and then onwards with the second half. And this is when my secret was revealed. To my horror, I could see my husband at the end of the row gesticulating to me. I tried as hard as I could to ignore him, but I could see in the corner of my eye he was whispering to my daughter. She then turned to her husband, who in turn sent the message down the line. And the message was this: "Can I have a drink of your water?" The answer, like Chinese whispers, went back down the line: no. Why not? The message came back down the line. My answer, back down the line: because you're driving.
Oh.
When this reply was passed to my daughter, she duly passed the message on. Also, the penny dropped right into the slot. Her head spun round and I could see the red mist descending like a cloud. We managed to get to the end of the performance with much applause and standing ovations for the actors, and I tried to get away before the tirade, but with no success. She rushed towards me in the foyer. "Your sippy bottle! Your sippy bottle," was all she could say. Her husband was comforting her, as he also knew the significance of what I'd said. All this time, I thought you were just keeping yourself sensibly hydrated, drinking your 6 litres a day, or whatever it is the guidelines say. But I also assumed it was water you were drinking, H2O like the rest of us. Of course, Father Simon, my sippy cup, held gin and tonic, if I remember. A good quality gin and also a slice of lime. By then, she was also pointing out the other circumstances I had been seen hydrating: school assemblies, nativity plays, carol concerts, school plays, sports days. Father Simon, you'd be amazed at what a sippy bottle can hold. 5 or 6 gins and tonics, and also 3/4 of a bottle of wine. Always drink responsibly.
Yeah, obviously.
In my defence, I would like to add that when I attended my own children's events, I was as sober as a judge. But I'd done my time. Grandchildren are different.
Yeah.
I don't want to ask forgiveness for myself. Just 2 weeks ago, I attended a local committee meeting, and my sippy bottle had pride of place on the table. White wine this time.
Yeah.
My son-in-law actively encourages me not to forget sippy bottle, especially with things like visiting petting zoos, ballparks, and christenings. I asked forgiveness for upsetting my daughter, as she never thought of using her water bottle with such imagination. I think lockdown helped her follow my lead when school parents' meetings were being Zoomed, and with our 4 school-aged children, that's where her sippy bottle came to the fore. She's now seldom seen without it. Her husband does the driving. My soul feels lighter already. Obviously, always drink responsibly and stick to...
Yes.
Also, this might be redundant, this bit. Stick to the units allowed for your age and sex. See your GP for details.
I mean, nice try.
Yeah, I
but
mean, added in desperation at the end. Maybe the desperation is to try and get Sister Susie's forgiveness. Let's see what she says. And, of course, she's speaking to us from the pub.
From the pub, yeah. Well, Nanny Carr, I have to say, I think this is a genius idea, and the fact that you got away with it for so long, I think, is pretty good. And I think a gin and tonic in a very appropriate places. There's nothing wrong with that. I would like you to have it in a pub rather than just at a committee meeting. But hey, you know,
I suspect though it wasn't one gin and tonic in the sippy bottle.
No, it wasn't.
It's a bank holiday.
Oh, I see. Oh, you're going to forgive? Okay, Brother Matthew.
I'm definitely going to forgive because, frankly, there's no other way of getting through Disney Amdram than having a very large gin and tonic to keep you going. Oh my goodness, they're doing Frozen again. Yes, no, I'm nothing to forgive, and having to get through committee meetings and everything else. Oh dear, oh dear.
Yes, committee meetings, carols, petting zoos, ballparks, and christenings.
No way. No, you can only do that with either a Sauvignon Blanc or a rather large gin and tonic.
Is that right? That's the top advice.
Yeah.
Responsibly, though.
Oh, obviously do it responsibly.
And don't exceed the units allowed per week.
Unless you really have to. But no, don't do that.
I don't think unless you really have to is actually part of the advice.
Oh, right. I thought that was on the thing. No.
All right. Do you forgive Nanny Carr? That is the question. The People's Verdict, please, 61054. First word is Simon. Okay, just before the 6 o'clock news, drive time here, Greatest Hits Radio, by the way, a confession from Nanny Carr, who admitted the fact that the way she got through her grandchildren's Amdram and school performances and nativity plays and carol concerts and sports days and school assemblies and ballparks and visiting petting zoos and christenings was that her sippy cup wasn't full of water, but was actually full of gin and tonic, or sometimes white wine. And she obviously was saying drink responsibly. Obviously, and only the correct number of units. Yeah. Anyway, the People's Verdict is in. Here it comes.
Forgiven, says Shona in Norwich. I do exactly the same, and no one suspects a thing when you carry the water bottle around. I sometimes sneak in a little tipple if I'm feeling cheeky. Michelle in Cardiff says...
Your cheeky voice is quite interesting.
It is, isn't it? Michelle in Cardiff says, not forgiven. Only because the Chinese whispers down the line in the front row must have been so distracting for the young performers. No talking in the auditorium.
That's quite right.
So true. But Eugene says, forgiven. Nanny Carr is a genius. I'm now rummaging through the boxes in my garage in search of old sippy cups. Nothing to forgive.
If you have a confession, we would love to receive it. Send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Ollie, because it's time for some excellent refreshment. And we're just grabbing something. What have you grabbed there from the trolley, Sister Susie?
I've grabbed us a nice pint of Brooklyn lager. Nice crisp Pilsner.
Except that a pint might be a little much because it's usually like 5.1 or something. So,
well, I don't know. That's fair enough.
Well, I'll have half and you can have the other half.
Yeah, lovely.
Always drink responsibly.
With a lemonade top, if you like.
No.
You don't want to put... Why would you put lemonade in it?
Well, to make it less alcoholic.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay. I'll think about that. I'll consider it and then say no. Today's confession, a little bit stressy, for reasons that will become apparent.
Oh, really?
It comes from Simon. Father Simon, Sister Susie, brother from the gutter, and Holly in the cupboard. I am now feeling the need to seek forgiveness for a small part of my life that dates back some 22 years.
Wow.
It's the spring of 2002, and I was travelling around Australia. I found myself settled in Sydney. I'm already starting to sweat. So I began to look for work. Well, the dream of getting a bar job on Bondi Beach didn't seem realistic, so instead I spent 6 weeks putting bin liners on women's dresses in the Target factory in a rundown suburb of Redfern. The money wasn't bad, but come on, I didn't come all the way to Australia to do such demeaning work. Well, things took a strange turn on St. Patrick's night when me and my mates and some Irish friends... from my hostel went out for several pints of Guinness. Father Simon, the one thing I clearly need to point out is that I am Bristolian. I am English. My granddad may have come from Cove in Cork, but I am definitely English and speak like a farmer. Oh, how reassuring.
Oh, good.
That's what he says. These are directions.
Okay.
As we were frequenting a lot of bars in the Rocks area and city centre of Sydney, we came across a beautiful Irish bar called the Paragon Hotel. It was very hip and young looking, with lots of lovely ladies inside. Wow, what a great place this would be to work, I thought. Now, as stated earlier, I was drinking with my Irish buddies. When discussing with them that I thought this would be a grand place to work, they agreed. They did say that, and this may give you a big clue as to where my confession is going, I would stand a much better chance of getting a bar job in the Irish bar if I actually was Irish. Well, Father Simon, I will say that I'm a pretty good person when it comes to accents.
How fortunate.
And I have some knowledge of Ireland from my late granddad. After a little vocal coaching from my Irish mates, I went up to the bar, saw a lovely girl working there, and said in my finest Southern Irish accent, which I would like you to do, please, Father Simon. Is your manager around at all? At all?
Dear.
Please.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Sure, mate, says the Australian
and
girl.
the Aussie accent as well.
Oh, nice.
A few minutes later, out came a big, tall, strapping Australian guy in his late 40s with the receding hair and a big beer belly. Reminded me a bit of Al Stewart from Home and Away. Australian accent, please, Father Simon. G'day, can I help you, mate? Irish accent. Have you got any jobs going here at all? Please.
Oh, no.
Well, look, I'm just... Well, the conversation soon went to the next level and I was in his office. Father Simon, the lies were spurting out of my mouth like someone on an episode of Traitors. I told him I was from Cove, and by working in an Irish bar, it would make me feel as though I was at home, all in a very good Irish accent. He seemed a very nice guy and offered me a job there and then. I would start in a couple of days for a trial shift. Well, got back to my Irish mates and they were in absolute hysterics, but mightily impressed also. A great night was had and we toasted St. Patrick into the early hours. The next day was all a bit of a blur. I had a dim recollection of the night before until my Irish mates then told me, "You do realise you got a job
What?
in the Paragon?" So you did.
Of course. Yes, so you did. Yeah. Oh.
Have I? That's awesome, I replied.
Wow.
Sounds like a farmer.
It does. Yeah.
Only thing is, they think you're Irish. Well, Father Simon, it may surprise you to know this. Yes, I did go to the trial shift and introduce myself as Simon from Cove in Cork. Yes, I had to speak in an Irish accent. Yes, all the other staff there totally believed me and bought it. So far, so good. But Father Simon, I loved this bar so much, I worked there for 5 months.
Wow.
For 5 months, whenever I went there, I had to speak in that amazing Irish accent of mine. I had to keep this up for 5 lots of 8-hour shifts a week. I even dated a girl from the bar for a while, and you've guessed it, even spoke in an Irish accent when I was going out with her.
What?
There was no going back. If she or the other staff knew I'd been lying all this time, they would find it very strange and deceitful. I would get home to my flat in Darling Harbour, which I shared with my English mates, and tell them if she was coming round, I'd have to be speaking in an Irish accent. They, of course, found it hilarious, and fair play for them for going along with it at the time. After 5 months of working there, it was time for me and my mates to depart Sydney and head up the East Coast. It felt so lovely to be myself and revert back to my Bristolian accent. Luckily for me, there was no social media, so my lies went with me, and I didn't really contact any of my previous colleagues or indeed the girl I was dating, as to be honest, she got a bit needy.
Oh.
Of course. Yeah. No,
So,
fair
Father
enough.
Simon, I seek forgiveness to all my former colleagues and manager. I was Simon from Bristol. I was never Irish. I spoke with a Bristolian accent and apologised for my deception. To my former girlfriend at the time, who all that time I was living a lie, and that's why I don't confirm your friend requests on social media. Okay, this is ongoing. Once I had gone down that path, there was no going back, and I absolutely loved working there. I leave my fate to you. Surely Matt is going to forgive me for this one. Well, you know, I think... yes, I think he forgives everybody pretty much. I think Sister Susie will be okay until you said your girlfriend was needy, and then I suspect she might have switched. What do you say, Sister Susie?
Pretty much, Simon. For the pure commitment, I was going to forgive you there. However, the lines, "she got a bit needy," therefore switched my mind. So I think that was a bit rude. And also, you know, ignoring her friend request on social media now, there is a repercussion for you. And I just don't think you deserve forgiveness for that alone.
Also
So
on social
not for
media,
me.
you can No one's going to know that you're from Bristol and not from Cove.
No.
Anyway, brother
Yeah.
from another gutter.
I mean, she may well not have been needy, but she was probably a bit thick if she couldn't work out that he wasn't Irish after... How long were they going out? And she doesn't realise that he's not. He's been putting on an accent the whole time. I think everyone in the Irish bar pretty much knew it, pretty much knew that he was putting on the accent, and so it was fine. Yeah. And also, doing it for 5 months, there's only how many times is he ending every sentence with "so it is,
I
so
could
it
have
is"?
kept that up for 5
really?
months.
For 5 months?
Yes.
Really?
I mean,
fooled everyone.
Outstanding work, by the way. So I am, just for those accents, I'm going to forgive.
Well, I would like to apologise to Bristolians, all Irish people and all Australians.
Yeah.
But, you work with what you've got, which in my case is not very much.
That's true.
People's verdict, please, do you forgive Simon? This is the Simon who sent in the confession, not me. 61054, first word is Simon. So there's far too many Simons in this story. 61054, first word is Simon. Forgiveness for Simon or not? But before the news, we had a confession from a Bristolian guy called Simon, who was in Australia and got work in an Irish bar, but the only way he could do that is by pretending to be Irish.
Yes.
So he went with the Irish accent. He went out with a woman also pretending to be Irish for a very long time. She turned out to be needy and thick.
Well...
So, and therefore...
No.
That was what you said.
No,
and so therefore hasn't got in touch with her at all.
Okay.
That's pretty much it. Anyway, I think that's a good summary. People's verdict. What did
So
they
Johnny
say?
says, I have to forgive this purely for Simon, both the confessor and the Mayo kind, keeping up the incredible accents.
Thank you.
How can someone keep up an accent for 5 months?
Or 5 minutes.
Just bonkers. Lydia says, undecided, being from Dublin myself, this was painful and funny to listen to. I'm not here to pass judgment,
Thank
though.
you, Lydia.
Literally the point of the feature. Sean from Cheltenham says, not forgiven. I thought I'd forgive you because I've done the accent thing many times, although not for monetary gain. However, your treatment of needy Aussie girlfriend was very poor, so your forgiveness has been rescinded.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Sean. And thank you, everybody who sent in a People's Verdict. If you have a confession, send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. New podcast arrives every Friday. Classic 1970. Whoops, there goes the drinks trolley. Quick, Susie, grab something. What have we gone for today?
I have grabbed a watermelon and mint spritzer, which is watermelon mint blended, and then top it up with soda. Very refreshing.
Very refreshing, and you can have as much of it as you like and drive home.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Thank you, socially responsible Susie there. Today's confession, kind of PG territory, I think, comes from Martin. Thank you, Martin. Now, there's a cast list that goes...
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
I haven't known that for a while.
Simon, Matt and the Forgiveness Collective. My sorry tale goes back to a long-forgotten time of over 30 years ago. But before I go into detail, I think I need to introduce you to those involved so that everything makes sense. There's myself, Martin, my wife, Debbie, her dad, Les, his eventual wife, Anne, my longtime friend and colleague, Carol, and her at the time newly found partner, Joe. It doesn't really matter if you can't remember the cast list, but all will become clear.
Okay.
Okay.
You can draw a little map in your book there. So this tale took place late September 1990, a week or so after my 30th birthday. During my birthday celebrations, Carol and Joe had first met and got together and decided that they wanted to see each other again. Now, Carol lived in Newcastle and Joe in Sawtry near Peterborough, not too far from us. So it was decided that they would meet again at our house for the weekend. That's me and Debbie, obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
At the same time, Les and Anne planned to stay with us as a late birthday celebration, so we had to think about sleeping arrangements in our house for the weekend. Debbie decided that due to his age, Les and Anne should have our double bed. We'd sleep on the bed settee in the spare room, and Carol and Joe could squeeze into a single bed in the third bedroom. So we're all set and ready to go. On the Saturday, once everyone had arrived and got settled in their respective rooms, and we'd had tea, we all headed out to the local pub to continue the celebrations. As I'm sure most of your listeners will recall, the 90s were heady days of pub lock-ins long before extended opening hours, and sure enough, we had a lock-in at the pub that night. At some stage in the wee small hours, we all left and set off back home, eventually leaving Carol and Joe behind as they continued to get to know each other better. When we got home, they were still nowhere to be seen. So we left the front door open, I mean not open but unlocked, and set off to our respective beds, where I promptly fell into a drunken slumber. Sometime later, I woke and needed to go to the loo, so I went to the bathroom. This was before the days of en-suites. I don't think it was, but anyway. But found the toilet door was locked. So, slightly puzzled, I headed back to bed, intending to try again later. However, I dozed off once more. The next thing I was aware of was a female voice just behind me saying, "Here, Les, move over, I've no room here." This was followed by a male voice just on the other side of me saying, "I can't, I'm at the edge of the bed already." I can say in all honesty that I've never sobered up as quickly as I did then, when I realised that the female voice behind me was Anne and the male next to me was my father-in-law, Les. Yes, I was in my double bed, naked, in between my father-in-law and his wife-to-be.
Oh, boy.
Obviously, I didn't say anything. I just froze in a state of panic, began thinking how I could escape without creating any sort of a scene. Now, in my thoughts, I couldn't climb over them to get out. That would have taken some explaining had they woken up. So I decided to crawl down between them to get out at the bottom of the bed, never thinking that in the process of doing so, I might come face to face with parts of their anatomy that I'd rather not see. So, eyes tightly shut, I managed to escape without seeing anything untoward and without waking anyone. Needless to say, I didn't manage much more sleep that night as I lay on the bed settee trying to come to terms with what had just happened, eventually working out that when I'd got up to go to the loo, Anne must have been in there, but rather than go back to Debbie on the bed settee, I'd gone back to my normal bed.
Of course.
And snuggled up with her dad by mistake. In the morning, when everyone was up and about, I asked Les and Anne if they'd slept well. To which Les replied that he had, but Anne complained that Les had been on her side of the bed most of the night, little realising that it had in fact been me. I'd gotten away with it, presumably because they'd both had as much as I had to drink. I did eventually pluck up the courage to tell them both what had happened. Les was quite nonplussed, and Anne told me not to worry, as she hadn't had her glasses on anyway. Thanks, Anne. So I can't really seek forgiveness from them. I do, however, seek forgiveness from Carol and Joe for taking the edge off their first night together, from Debbie for causing her many awkward moments in the days and weeks after, as I recounted this tale to other friends at the time, and from my daughters, Katie and Beth, who were both mortified when they heard what had happened. Sadly, Les and Joe are no longer with us, but I'm sure they would smile at this. So if I was also forgiven by yourselves in the studio, I would think that I could finally be able to sleep peacefully at night in my own bed, under the right circumstances. Yours in hope, lots of love. Yours sincerely, Martin. I mean, the idea of ending up in bed naked with your father-in-law and his future wife really doesn't bear thinking about. But anyway, that was the tale. What do you say, Suze?
Martin, the issue I have here is you had lots of house guests, and you still decided to sleep naked. Like, what if you need to go for a wee? What are you going to do? You just run to the toilet with no clothes on?
Yes, that's what he did.
Put some pyjamas on when you've got house guests.
Cover it up, man.
Sake, cover up. And for that reason, I just can't forgive you, because I just think it's just not good enough.
Also, always drink responsibly. Don't end up in that kind of situation where is that my father-in-law? Sorry about that. What do you say, Brother Matthew?
Well, I'm going to forgive, even though I completely agree with Susie. What on earth is this thing about being in bed naked? Makes that, and particularly when you've got guests. But anyway, it's far too fanciful and continental for my taste to be in bed naked. So I'm probably going to forgive. And also, actually, the person whose fault it was the person locking themselves in the toilet in the middle of the night. That sounds a bit dodgy.
Also, the pub lock-in, maybe is the licensing laws.
It was locks all over the place, wasn't it? That was what the real problem was. So that and naked people in bed. So for that reason, yes, I'm going to forgive.
Okay, people's verdict, please. 61054. Do you forgive Martin, yes or no? 61054. First word is Simon. Just before 6 o'clock, you heard a torrid tale from Martin, a story of illegal drinking, illegal 90s lock-in drinking, and he ended up in bed with his with his father-in-law and his future wife-in-law. No, father-in-law with his future wife.
Yes.
You see, when the morals go, there's just absolutely no accounting for taste. Martin needs forgiveness. What did he get on the people's verdict?
So, not forgiven, says Johnny in Glasgow. Who sleeps in bed naked when they have guests over? Way too personal and also weird. But Mike says this
Did that get in because you agreed?
Yes, I did. Yes. This is easy to forgive, says Mike. Ultimately, he realised his mistake, snuck out of the bed, and managed to get into his own bed unscathed. I'm impressed with how he shimmied out of the bed with no one noticing.
Yes.
And another Mike says also forgiven, simply for being able to go back to sleep after getting up for the loo and not actually going. Super bladder.
Yes, or just blame the alcohol, I suspect. Anyway, if that's inspired a confession for you, then get in touch. Send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Okay, let's check in. Find out precisely what we're going to grab from that drinks trolley as it goes hurtling past. What do you have for us today, Sue?
I've grabbed 3 Caprinias, which is cachaça, sugar and lime. Very tasty.
What's one? Is that one of those kind of small little cute bottles?
Yeah, it's a cachaça is a Brazilian national spirit. Really, it's like white rum, but it's
lovely.
There,
Okay.
yeah, Matt, you'll like it a lot.
Matt can have mine, I think.
Yes.
Caprinia.
Okay, thank you very much. Thomas sends in today's confession. Thank you, Thomas. Father Simon and the ever-congenial collective of hard-to-please Holly, steadfast Susie, perpetual forgiver Matt.
Yes.
My confession has burdened me for over 30 years, and it's time to seek forgiveness. Cast your minds back to the summer of 1992. I'd been employed by then British Rail for 9 years. My official title was Traction and Rolling Stock Maintenance Engineer, commonly called a fitter and occasionally a turner. My job involved repairs and servicing of freight railway locomotives in every aspect, from the windows to the wheels and everything in between. Okay, so that's what he did. Thoroughly enjoyed my work, and it was a huge source of satisfaction when the vehicle you'd nursed back to life went back into service, and it was also a great source of banter. And we had some jolly japes.
I'll bet.
About which we're about to focus. Part of my work involved inspections underneath the locomotives after descending a few steps into a pit. With torch and clipboard in hand, a walkthrough was performed, as you would see in an MOT inspector would do on a family car, day in, day out at your local garage, but on a much bigger scale. So on a regular basis, we would set up to frighten a new starter apprentice as a kind of welcome to the job type thing. It was always met with an exclamation of, "Oh, you guys, you got me," with a few expletives occasionally. I was assigned the jobs for my shift, and accompanying me today was new starter Edward. Lovely guy, very studious, clever, already showing promise to be a highly skilled tradesman. Edward had been to other smaller workshops, but it was his first day in the big league. He was slightly overawed by our depot, marvelling at the huge, powerful locomotives and the large scale of engineering. He was very excited, and his youthful joy was great to see. Sadly, that would diminish very soon. That's my fault. Locomotive number 37234 was having a B exam, which needed an underframe inspection as part of the job. I left Edward in the canteen and made a quick visit to the loo to set everything up. When I returned, I explained to Edward that we had to go down into the pit to inspect the underframe, the wheels and that kind of thing. I told him to be very careful of protruding items and the low headroom in places. Safety always. That's what we used to say, Father Simon. Also, I said to be very vigilant and to look out for anything untoward on the underframe assembly. At this point in the story, it would be remiss if I didn't add a very important factor to this torrid tale. Unbeknownst to Edward, this inspection was a foursome. I had 2 accomplices. First, Percy, a very experienced locomotive electrician who was hidden away behind a large tool locker, topside, adjacent to said locomotive, holding a large length of near-invisible fishing line. The finishing line ran from Percy across a walkway and disappeared in the dirt and darkness of the locomotive bogie, where it was attached to the 4th and most important member of the team, Armanda, who was a shop window mannequin's arm, which was splashed with red paint and dirt and was perched strategically and precariously on a ledge. Below locomotive 3723-4, myself and Edward were in the pit progressing the examination. He was in charge of the torch and was excitedly pointing out any problems, and I was recording them on my clipboard. We'd reached the target point in the pit. Edward, being a keen new starter, was engrossed in the lower workings of this iron leviathan. I took a slight step back so Edward could stand underneath the as yet unseen, finely balanced appendage and let the signal words ring out, "Leaking flange."
Of course. Yeah.
Memorable words. Then Percy, with a tug of utmost precision, released the crimson-adorned appendage and let gravity do its work. With the skill of a test match wicket-keeper, Edward caught the plastic prosthetic. I waited for the usual shriek and laugh, "Oh, you guys." But no guffaws or laughter rang out, not from Edward. He let out a blood-curdling scream, with unrepeatable expletives rolling off his tongue, and with his face contorted and eyes widened, he very quickly launched the arm as if it was scorching hot skyward. Unfortunately, with zero headroom, it immediately rebounded off a protruding pipe flange, not leaking, and he incurred a plastic index finger in his left eye. It was then the prank took a turn for the worse.
Oh, right.
Edward decided to make a run for it. Now, this hot-footing manoeuvre would have been okay in a different environment, but underneath a 110-ton railway vehicle with lots of sticky-out bits, a slippery floor and undulating headroom, running was very dangerous, and Edward's head immediately struck the side of number 1 fuel tank, and it let out an awful thud. He then tried to run in the other direction, and he struck number 2 fuel tank. Again, a terrible thud. By now, I realised we'd slightly overcooked the prosthetic prank and stepped in to wrestle Edward to a standstill with a reverse bear hug, like a Heimlich manoeuvre midriff grasp, sustaining an accidental headbutt myself, which I probably deserved, and eventually brought Edward to a relative stop. He was trembling and breathing heavily. I slowly walked him out of the pit, desperately trying to avoid him hitting any more metal protuberances. Safety first, as always. Percy's belly laughing came to an abrupt end when he saw Edward covered in oil, dirt and grease and a lot of blood. The real stuff, not the signal red paint. Father Simon, I do need to ask for forgiveness, please, from Edward and approximately 20 other new starters, some fresh out of school, some advanced into adulthood, for such wickedness in a below-ground level railway environment. I eagerly await your judgment. Hopefully it'll be just and fair. Well, I've got no idea whether it's going to be just and fair, but Susie's going to take a dim view and Matt will forgive. This is my prediction.
Yes.
That's what I'm thinking. But what do you say to Thomas, the ex-fitter and occasional turner?
Well, Thomas, I don't forgive you, because the thing that gets me is when people say, "Oh, it's just a bit of banter or a jolly jape, and isn't it fun?" And it's not. It's just another word for being mean. And this is a pure example. Danger can happen. Not funny at all, I'm afraid, Thomas, or your friend Percy. You can go back to where you came from.
Well,
not forgiven.
A prank underneath a 100-ton railway vehicle is a dangerous thing. Brother Matthew.
I mean, I'm not a massive fan of pranks normally, or indeed in this case. And I mean, danger can happen, as Susie pointed out there. That said, I mean, it was pretty funny. And also, what's he doing? What's Edward doing running around? Why are you running around? Oh, that's not helping. Throwing the arm in the air isn't going to help. And running up the train, running up the hill, as Kate Bush said. And nice use of the word flange, not used enough on Greatest Hits. Leaking flanges, more of them on Greatest Hits, I think. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Didn't follow that at all, but
no,
anyway.
Never happened.
People's verdict, please. Do you forgive Thomas, yes or no? It's 61054 on our text. Nice blend of music.
Yes.
First verdict, Simon, it's the people's verdict. Do you forgive Thomas for his 100-ton railway manoeuvre and false arm? First of all, before the news, we heard from Thomas, a sorry tale. Thomas is an ex-fitter and occasional turner. Also, Edward the apprentice. Also, a locomotive 3723-4. Also, a blooded shop mannequin's arm, which caused chaos. People's verdict, here it comes.
Dallas in Bristol says, forgiven. Having been at the receiving end of apprenticeship jokes like a long wait and a bucket of steam, you have to forgive Thomas. He was only keeping up with the team engineering spirit. But Drock says, no, you are not forgiven. I will never understand why men have to act silly. What goes on in their heads that make them think that pranks are funny? I was in a mine lift once when the men decided it would be a good idea to stop the lift and make it fall. Not funny.
No.
But Kieran in Birmingham says, forgiven, for the simple reason it was a Class 37 locomotive. If you've never heard one at full chat, do yourself a favour and listen. In fact, why not play one now, Simon, for 10 minutes or so?
Right, okay. Do we have one?
I don't think we do.
I don't think we do.
Sad.
Thank you very much, Dee, for the verdict. And if you have a confession, send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. There is a new Confessions podcast which will be with you sometime tomorrow.